Hi, I'm Kris Vallotton from Bethel Church in Redding, California. And my team and I were having a conversation about 2 weeks ago, just talking about the coronavirus and how can we help. And the conversation got to the subject of fear and how much fear there is in the world right now and how uncertain people feel. And it's kind of an upheaval in the world, as you probably know, or at least you know people that are in that situation. And as we started to converse, I said, wow, this is really a great time to maybe talk about spiritual warfare and the spirit of fear and how the spirit of fear tries to get in our lives. And we began to have a conversation around a book that I wrote, Spirit Wars, the book that I wrote. And I said, man, I would just so love to give that book away for free and maybe do just something live that's kind of directed at the virus, but also connects with the book. And so that was kind of the birth of this whole thing. We got a hold of our publisher. By the way, I just want to shout out to Baker Publishing, Chosen. They got right on board and said, yeah, let's do that. We want to help too, however we can help. So this is the first time we've ever done anything like this. So I hope that you'll bear with me. But so we're going to take you through the Spirit Wars book in 4 weeks. We'll do this a couple times a week. And you already have the book. And what we want of you is to read along with us. And it would be best if you at least read the chapters that we're talking about every week. So this week, we'll go through the introduction and we'll go through the chapter 1. And then later on, we'll go through chapters 2 and 3. And if you could just maybe get all the way through chapter 3, it'll really help you as I talk, because I'm going to be talking as if you have read the chapters, as opposed to going line by line through the chapters. I want to give you some, make this relevant to where you're at right now, and also tell you a little bit about my story as we go. And the goal of this is to really, obviously, first of all, bring some peace to you. And secondly, give you some weapons of warfare and really help you to be equipped to really fight yourself through the season and your family through the season. I've had so much fear in my life. I always jokingly say I have a PhD in fear. And so when this whole thing came down with the virus, I just really felt equipped. I was like, yeah, the first couple of days, I have to honestly say that I had some anxiety. It wasn't real high anxiety or anything, but definitely, everyone has this sense of uncertainty. So I wouldn't say it was a great upheaval, but I definitely was anxious. And I began to, by the third day, I'm like, hey, I wrote a book on fear, on spiritual warfare. I need to apply these tools to my own life. And earnestly, I began to apply these things that I am going to teach you over the next 4 weeks. And it just brought me back to a place of peace. And anytime I get a little bit anxious, I just go back to that place. So I always like to just begin the session with just a few seconds of prayer. So I just ask, Lord, that you would take this conversation, really make it relevant to where people are right now, and take this little teaching that we're doing today and the book, and just really let it equip people really to make a huge difference in their world. And so let's talk about the introduction. The introduction of the book is really, it's really a quick overview of my story. When I was a very young man, I think I was 20 years old. Kathy and I were brand new. We were newlyweds, and about probably a year and a half after we were married, Kathy was pregnant with our first child. And I got in the bathtub and take a bath. I'd been working long hours as a mechanic. And when I went to get out of the bathtub, I started to have a panic attack. I didn't know it was a panic attack at the time. I actually thought I was having a heart attack. And my wife, Kathy, called our doctor, who's a friend of ours, and said, Kris is having a heart attack. And he went through the symptoms and he said, no, he's not having a heart attack. He's having a panic attack. And that was the beginning of a 3.5 year nightmare, really. And I began to have panic attacks like that, when my heart would beat, out of my chest, and I would sweat the bed wet, and I would have these visions of doing horrible things and horrible things happening to me. They would happen, these started out a few times a day, and within 2 weeks, I was having these like 20, 30 times a day, these crazy thoughts that it felt like my mind would just go nuts. And I had this terrible fear of hurting someone, hurting myself, dying. And when I got out of the bathtub that day, that thought was that I was going to die, but it was more like someone put a gun to my head and said, I'm going to kill you. And so that started this journey. And out of that journey, we moved to this little town. We were in the Bay Area at the time, living in the Silicon Valley. And I was working as a shop foreman, just 20, 21 years old. We moved to a little town called Lewiston with 900 people. And I really thought that was going to be my salvation. Like, we need to get out of the city, get out of the traffic, get out of the high pressure job, and just move to a little house on the prairie was kind of our, thought. And we finally did move to Lewiston that year, sold our house, bought a house in Lewiston. And instead of it getting better, I actually got worse. And I started seeing visions, open visions of demons would come in my room, and it wasn't illusions. Like, they would knock pictures off the wall, turn lights on and off. I mean, Kathy was in the room with me when it would happen. And at nighttime, oftentimes I wake up and somebody would be choking me. And it was very, very scary. And we didn't know anybody because we'd moved to a place where we didn't know a soul. And we had our first child, and it was just really, really tough. And I didn't want to go get, I didn't want to go to a counselor because I knew they would, in those days, they would just put you in a mental hospital, and I didn't want to be in a mental hospital. And I also didn't want to tell my Christian friends, because I'm like, oh, they're like, you're demon possessed. And I had been in some deliverance sessions where we're trying to deliver someone else. And I'm like, yeah, if I ever have that happen, I don't really want any help from those guys. And I really had been trained out of my solution too, because I was taught that a Christian could be demonized, but they could be mentally ill, but they couldn't be demonized. And so one night I was laying down, I couldn't sleep. This was my normal night. I'd sleep an hour or two a night. And so I got up and I was laying next to our stereo, those old stereos. And in those days we didn't have, we didn't have pods that you can listen to, or we didn't, that was a long time ago. All we had was this big stereo. So I was laying I had my ear against the stereo so I wouldn't wake up my family. And I heard this man preaching, and he said, God hasn't given you a spirit of fear, but love, power, and a sound mind. I knew that verse really well. I knew the Bible really well. I had been Christian for probably around 4 years by the time I moved to Lewiston. But the man said this. He said, some of you think you're insane or you're going insane, but the truth is that you're listening to a spirit of insanity. And he said the way that a spirit works is he gives you your thoughts. He gives you his thoughts and then accuses you of having them. And so I laid there, I was laying on my back, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'd never heard anybody say that. That a demon attacks you by giving you his thoughts and then accuses you of having them. And so I'm laying there on my back, and I asked the Lord, what should I do? And the Lord said to me, I want you to tell the spirit of fear, and I want you to tell the spirit of insanity to leave you. And although I'd seen demons many, many times, I didn't see anything happen this time, but it felt like something got up off of me. I was laying on my back, and it felt like something got off of me. And as soon as that happened, immediately my mind came back. And I began to be like perfectly clear. And for an entire week, my mind was perfectly clear. And I realized like I actually wasn't insane. I was actually in a battle, in a demonic battle, and I needed to learn how to stay free. I got free that night. I made a covenant with God that day that I would help other people get free. And so this is really an exciting time when actually the whole world is in this turmoil, and this brings up a lot of stuff in you, as I'm sure is some of it's normal, and then some of it is actually, something that you've dealt with a long time. And this has been like your spiritual life's on a treadmill, and you're like, oh, I do have some heart pain. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to pray for you right now, that God would give you peace. And as we go through each of these chapters, that peace would increase every time that you learn something new. So Lord, I just release peace over them that surpasses understanding, that guards their hearts and their minds in Christ Jesus. And Lord, you haven't given us a spirit of fear, but love and power and a sound mind. And so Lord, I just break every spirit that is trying to attack the minds of these folks. And Lord, I break the terror. I break the false visions. I break down the speculations, the lofty things that are against your people. And Lord, I thank you that you've given us full armor. And Lord, I pray right now that everyone who watches this video would suddenly have the Prince of Peace that crushes Satan under your feet, would actually move in their behalf and bring them peace. God bless you. See you next time.